Tonight, we drift back, far back, to a Rome that no longer exists, yet somehow never quite disappeared. The air is warm. Not hot, just the gentle warmth of a late afternoon in early spring. The kind of warmth that makes marble feel almost soft under the sun. The year is 44 BCE. Rome is not just a city. It is the center of the known world, loud, crowded, powerful, and tired. And in the middle of it all walks one man, Gaius Julius Caesar, but we will not rush. This is a story for resting minds. So we walk slowly beside him. The weight of a crown that was never worn. Caesar did not begin as a king. Rome hated kings. Truly hated them. Generations earlier, Romans had overthrown their last monarch and sworn never again to bow to one man. Instead, they built a republic, a system where senators, magistrates, and elected officials shared power. At least, that was the idea. But over time, the republic grew complicated. Rome expanded across continents. Armies marched for years. Generals became famous. Rich families competed. Politics became less about service and more about survival. By the time Caesar was born, Rome was already shaky, like a grand building with tiny cracks in the walls. Caesar grew up inside that system. Clever, ambitious, calm. He understood people. He knew how to smile at crowds and how to wait patiently while rivals made mistakes. He did not shout his way to power. He flowed toward it. The soldier who never left the battlefield. One of the quiet reasons Caesar became so powerful was distance. While senators argued in Rome, Caesar was far away in Gaul, modern France. For years he led campaigns. Slow marches through forests, camps under cold stars, letters written by firelight. His soldiers did not just respect him. They loved him. He shared hardships. He remembered names. He rewarded loyalty. He forgave mistakes. To the men who marched beside him, he was more than a general. He was their future, and that is important. Because in Rome, power did not only come from speeches. It came from legions. Crossing the line that should never be crossed eventually, Rome's leaders grew nervous. Caesar's military command was supposed to end. He was expected to return to Rome as a private citizen. But private citizens could be prosecuted, sued, ruined. Caesar knew his enemies were waiting. Between his army and Rome ran a small river, the Rubicon. Roman law said a general could not cross it with troops. If he did, it meant civil war. The night was cold when Caesar made his choice. Torches flickered. Water moved quietly under moonlight. He paused, just for a moment. Then he stepped forward. His army followed. That single step broke the old rules. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just boots in shallow water. A soft splash that echoed across history. Rome was no longer a republic in peace. Rome was Rome at war with itself. Why people let him win civil wars are not fast. They are slow struggles of loyalty, fear, and exhaustion. Caesar did not win only because he was brilliant. He won because many Romans were tired of chaos, tired of rival generals, tired of corruption. When Caesar defeated his enemies, including Pompey, once his ally, he did something unusual. He forgave people, again and again. Men who had fought against him expected punishment. Instead, they were welcomed back, their property returned, their status restored. This made Caesar seem merciful, but it also made him unforgettable. Every forgiven man now owed him. The title that made everyone uneasy after the war, Caesar became dictator. Now in Rome, dictator did not originally mean tyrant. It was a temporary emergency role, usually lasting 6 months. Caesar was made dictator for longer. Then longer. Then in 44 BCE, he was declared dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. It was said calmly, officially, almost politely. But the word life hung in the air. Romans had removed kings centuries earlier. Now one man held permanent, unmatched power. Even if he never wore a crown. Everyone could see the shape of one. The small things that felt too big. Caesar did not behave wildly. In fact, much of what he did was practical. He reformed the calendar, yes, the one that later became ours. He settled veterans. He reduced debts. He planned cities, roads, libraries. But symbolism matters. He sat on a golden chair in the Senate. His statue stood among those of kings. Coins showed his face while he was still alive. People rose when he entered. At festivals, someone once tried to place a crown on his head. He refused. The crowd cheered, but whispers began. Why did he refuse, if not to show he could? The men who smiled and worried at the same time, not everyone hated Caesar. In fact, many of the men who later turned against him had been helped by him. One of them was Marcus Junius Brutus. Thoughtful, serious, philosophical. He believed deeply in the Republic. Caesar trusted him, treated him almost like a son. Another was Gaius Cassius, sharper, more restless. He had fought against Caesar, been forgiven, and now watched power concentrate in one pair of hands. These men did not meet in dark caves. They met in homes, gardens, quiet rooms, conversations that began gently. Rome used to be different. Is this still a republic? What happens after Caesar? It is strange, isn't it? The man known for mercy created enemies not through cruelty, but through greatness that felt too large. Fear of the future, this is the why of the assassination. Not sudden hatred. Not madness. Fear. The conspirators believed that if Caesar remained alive, Rome would slide permanently into monarchy. They worried about what came after him. A son? A dynasty? Endless rule by one family? They told themselves something comforting. We are not killing a man. We are saving a system. History often moves on such sentences. The plan forms like mist, the conspiracy grew slowly. Not with dramatic vows, but nods, glances, private talks. They chose a day, March 5th, 10th, the Ides of March. Caesar would attend a Senate meeting in the theater of Pompey. Ironically, a building linked to his old rival. They would be unarmed except for small daggers, hidden in their robes. One man alone could fail, many together might succeed. There was no grand general leading them, just shared conviction. And shared fear. Even then, some hesitated. Killing Caesar meant killing stability, killing popularity, killing a symbol many loved. But they believed they were preventing something worse. The morning that felt ordinary on the morning of March 5th, 10th, Rome did not tremble. Vendors shouted. Horses clopped, bread baked, laundry dried in sunlight. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, had bad dreams the night before. She begged him not to go. For a moment Caesar agreed to stay home. But a conspirator visited, gently mocking the idea of fear, suggesting the Senate might think him weak. Caesar sighed, put on his robe, and left. Sometimes history turns not on storms, but on social pressure. The walk to the Senate, imagine walking beside him now. The streets are bright, the sky pale blue. He moves with confidence, though perhaps a little tired. He had been planning campaigns, reforms, travel. A man approaches, trying to hand him a note warning of danger. Caesar does not read it. There will be time later, he thinks. There's always time later. Inside the theater of Pompey, the Senate chamber is not enormous. Marble floor. Statues. A sense of importance. The conspirators are already there. Faces calm, hearts loud. They gather around Caesar, as if to present a petition. One man grabs his toga. Another strikes. Then another. It is not clean. Not heroic. Not graceful. It is confusion, movement, fear on all sides. Even the attackers are shocked by the reality of what they are doing. Caesar tries to rise, to speak, to defend himself. But surrounded, he cannot. When he sees Brutus among them, something in him shifts. Surprise, maybe. Sadness. Resignation. He pulls his robe over his face and falls. 23 wounds, they later say, but most were shallow. It was not a duel. It was a crowd, and then silence. What they thought would happen, the conspirators believed Rome would cheer. They stepped outside, blades raised, shouting about freedom and the Republic. But the crowd did not celebrate. People were confused, afraid, loyal to Caesar. Dependent on the stability he had brought, the Senate had removed one man. They had not removed uncertainty. Why it really happened. So softly now, as if we are summing up the day before sleep, Julius Caesar was assassinated because he had become too powerful in a society built to fear kings. He had control of the army, lifelong dictatorship, public devotion, symbols of monarchy surrounding him. Even though he may not have planned to call himself king, many believed Rome's old freedoms were fading. The conspirators acted from a mix of political belief, personal fear, pride, genuine concern for Rome's future. They thought removing him would restore balance. Instead, it began another cycle of war that eventually led to an emperor anyway. History can be ironic like that. The quiet lesson: as night settles over ancient Rome, we see something gentle beneath the tragedy. Systems change. Power shifts. People act believing they are right. But history rarely returns to how things were. Caesar fell on the Senate floor, but the republic he lived in had already been changing for decades. His death did not stop the transformation. It only hurried it. Soon, his adopted heir Octavian would rise. And Rome would have emperors. The thing the conspirators feared most came anyway. And now we let Rome sleep. The torches dim. Footsteps fade. Marble cools under moonlight. Caesar is gone. The senators go home. The city breathes. Somewhere a baker prepares dough for tomorrow. A soldier sharpens a blade. A child sleeps, unaware that the world has shifted. History feels loud when we study it. But when we drift through it slowly, it is just people. Tired people, hopeful people, afraid people. Just like now. And with that, we let the streets of Rome grow quiet. The city does not sleep all at once. Even after something enormous has happened, even after blood has touched stone and history has shifted direction, Rome still moves in small, ordinary ways. Doors close. Lamps are lit. Someone laughs somewhere, not yet knowing. A cart rattles over uneven road. Life continues because it always does. But beneath the everyday sounds, something invisible has changed. Like the air just before a storm when birds go quiet and even the wind seems to be listening. Word spreads slowly at first. Caesar is dead, not wounded. Not ill. Dead. Some refuse to believe it. He had survived wars, betrayals, illnesses, storms at sea. He seemed like one of those figures history protects. But as more voices repeat the news, disbelief melts into something else. A wide, uncertain feeling that no one quite knows how to name. Shops close early. Conversations lower to whispers. Friends look at each other with raised brows that ask questions words cannot safely carry. The conspirators, meanwhile, are discovering something uncomfortable. The story they told themselves, that Rome would rise in joy, that citizens would thank them for restoring liberty, does not unfold the way they imagined. They walk through the streets expecting applause. Instead, they see shutters closing. They see people stepping aside, not in admiration, but in caution. Because when power breaks, ordinary people do not feel freedom first. They feel danger. Mark Antony, Caesar's ally and loyal supporter, had not been killed. The conspirators had debated it. Some wanted to remove him too. But Brutus argued that killing more men would make them look like butchers, not saviors. They would strike one blow, he said, clean and principled. Now Antony moves carefully, like a man crossing a frozen river he is not sure will hold his weight. He sends messages, he listens, he waits. He understands crowds. He understands grief. And most of all, he understands opportunity. Caesar's body lies where it fell until attendants, shaken and pale, carry it away. The sight of it spreads a different kind of message than speeches ever could. This is not an abstract political act. This is a man people saw in parades, heard in forums, cheered in victories. And now he is still. In the days that follow, Rome feels like it is holding its breath. No one knows which way things will tilt. The Senate tries to steady the situation, declaring an amnesty. The conspirators will not be punished, they say. Peace must be preserved. But peace built on shock is fragile. Then comes the funeral. If you want to understand how the assassination truly changed Rome, you do not stand in the Senate chamber. You stand in the crowd at Caesar's funeral. The body is displayed. The wounds are shown. Not described in detail, not in horror, but enough for people to see that this was not a quiet passing. This was violence brought into the heart of their world. Antony speaks. He does not shout at first. He does not rage. He speaks slowly, carefully, reminding people of who Caesar was to them, the games he funded, the debts he eased, the land he promised veterans. He reads Caesar's will, revealing that Caesar left money to the citizens of Rome and opened his gardens to public use. This is not the portrait of a tyrant people recognize. Emotion moves through the crowd like a rising tide. Grief turns to anger, not organized, not planned, just human. The same people who might have quietly accepted a change in leadership now feel something personal has been taken. The conspirators had thought in terms of systems, titles, laws. The people feel loss. By the end of the funeral, the mood has shifted entirely. Fires are lit, crowds surge. The houses of some conspirators are threatened. Brutus and Cassius, once confident they had acted for the Republic, begin to understand that Rome is no longer listening to their explanations. They leave the city, not in triumph, in retreat. And here is the soft, almost sad irony that settles over everything like evening dust. The act meant to save the Republic has unleashed forces no one can neatly control. Power does not flow back into the old channels. It rushes into new ones. In the vacuum Caesar leaves behind, three figures begin to rise into focus. Mark Antony, the seasoned ally. Octavian, Caesar's young adopted heir, not yet 20, quiet and watchful. And Lepidus, another supporter with military strength. Octavian is easy to underestimate at first. He looks young, almost fragile. But he carries something powerful, Caesar's name. In his will, Caesar had adopted him as a son. Suddenly, this quiet youth becomes Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. In Rome, names are not just sounds, they're banners. The three men form an alliance, uneasy but practical. Together, they hunt down the assassins. Lists are made not of laws, but of people, enemies, rivals, those who might threaten their hold on the future. This period is not gentle. Rome, which the conspirators hoped to spare from tyranny, now sees proscriptions, confiscations, and fear. Brutus and Cassius gather armies in the east. They still believe they acted rightly. They still speak of liberty. But belief does not always defeat momentum. On the plains of Philippi, their forces clash with those of Antony and Octavian. After hard fighting and miscommunication, both Brutus and Cassius die by their own hands, choosing that end over capture. With them dies the last serious military hope of restoring the old republic as it had been. But even then, Rome does not settle. Antony and Octavian soon turn against each other. Old alliances fray. Pride, ambition, and mistrust return, the same forces that shaped Caesar's world. Antony aligns with Cleopatra in Egypt. Octavian stays closer to Rome, presenting himself as its protector. Another war. More marchers. More tired soldiers under wide skies. Finally, Octavian wins, but he has learned from history. He does not call himself king. He does not even call himself dictator for life. He moves more softly than Caesar did at the end. He keeps the Senate, the old titles, the familiar shapes of the Republic. He simply holds the real power behind them. Rome, exhausted by decades of conflict, accepts it. And so, gently, almost quietly, the Republic becomes an empire. Not in one loud declaration, but in a slow settling of authority into one man's hands. The future the conspirators feared arrives anyway, only now it comes wrapped in careful language and patient strategy. If we drift back to that Senate chamber, to the moment blades flashed in anxious hands, we can see how human it all was. No monsters, no perfect heroes. Just people trying to control a future that refused to stay still. Caesar did not fall only because of ambition or jealousy. He fell because Rome had grown too large, too complex, too powerful for its old political structure to contain. He was both a cause and a symptom of change already underway. The men who killed him believed they could turn the river back by removing one stone. But history is not a river that flows backward. Once it gathers speed, it finds new paths. Now the night deepens over ancient Rome. The noise of armies, speeches, and crowds fades into the distance of centuries. Marble cracks, temples fall. The forum becomes ruin. But the story remains, carried in books, in classrooms, in quiet bedtime tales like this one. And when we look at it with sleepy eyes, the sharp edges soften. We see not just betrayal, but fear of losing a way of life. Not just ambition, but longing for stability. Not just the death of a man, but the turning of an age. Somewhere in that ancient city, long ago, someone who never knew Caesar still woke the next morning, baked bread, swept a doorstep, worried about family. For most people, history's great events pass overhead like distant thunder. And that is the final gentle truth we carry into rest. Even the fall of the most powerful man in the world happens inside an ordinary day, under an ordinary sky. The stars above Rome that night looked the same as the night before. They always do. So we let the city grow small now, shrinking into the distance of time, the Senate House quiet, the Forum empty. Footsteps fading on old stone roads. The questions, the fears, the ambitions of long ago drift away like echoes in a vast hall. All that remains is a calm, dark sky over a sleeping world. And you, here safe and still, far from daggers and debates, listening as history itself slows, softens, and finally rests. Time passes differently when we are drifting. Years that once felt loud and urgent now move like slow clouds across a wide sky. Rome, which seemed to stand at the center of everything, becomes smaller in the distance of the mind. But before it fades completely, there is one more gentle thread to follow, one more soft understanding to settle into place. After Octavian becomes the steady hand guiding Rome, people begin to notice something curious. Life, for many, feels calmer. The endless cycle of civil wars that had shaped Caesar's adulthood finally eases. Roads are safer. Grain arrives more regularly. Veterans receive land. Temples are repaired. Laws are organized. It is not perfect. It never is. But it is stable. And stability, to tired people, can feel like peace. This is the great quiet paradox that lingers behind Caesar's assassination. The men who struck him down feared one-man rule above all else. They believed shared power, debate, and the old ways were the heart of freedom. Yet the decades before Caesar had already shown how fragile that system had become. Rival generals used armies as political tools. Elections were influenced by wealth and intimidation. The Senate often stalled while problems grew. Caesar did not invent these weaknesses. He stepped into them. And after his death, the solution Rome settled on was not a return to the past, but a new shape entirely, one leader, carefully presented, surrounded by old forms that gave comfort while real decisions flowed from a single center. If we look at this not with sharp judgment but with sleepy kindness, it feels less like a simple tragedy and more like the turning of seasons. Winter does not argue with autumn. Spring does not apologize to winter. Each arrives because the conditions are ready. Caesar's rise happened because Rome was ready to change. His death happened because some could not accept that change. The empire that followed happened because, in the end, most people chose order over uncertainty. And somewhere in all of this, Caesar himself becomes less a man and more a symbol. Stories grow around him. Some paint him as a tyrant hungry for a crown. Others as a visionary reformer taken too soon. The truth, as it often does, rests quietly in between. He was ambitious, yes. Confident in ways that made others uneasy. He enjoyed honor, display, recognition. But he was also practical, patient, and deeply aware of public opinion. He forgave enemies not only from kindness, but from strategy. He moved through politics like a seasoned sailor through shifting winds. On the Ides of March, he did not walk into the Senate believing he was invincible. But he did believe perhaps that he understood Rome well enough to manage its dangers. That small miscalculation, that others' fear had grown beyond his reach, was all history needed. Yet even that moment, so famous, so dramatic in retellings, was only a heartbeat in the long life of the city. Rome had seen fires, invasions, plagues, revolutions. It would see more. One man's fall, even one as towering as Caesar, did not stop the sun from rising over the Tiber the next morning. And that is where our drifting thoughts like to settle. Because when we zoom out slowly, gently, the sharpness of political struggle softens into something almost peaceful. People striving. Systems changing. Time moving forward no matter what anyone wishes. The conspirators, in their final moments on distant battlefields, may have wondered if they had failed. Caesar, in his final breath, may have felt betrayal or simply surprise. Antony, Octavian, the crowds, the soldiers, all believed their choices mattered deeply, and they did. But not in the neat, controllable way anyone hoped. History is less like a straight road and more like a wide, wandering river. Everyone can push at the water, build banks, throw stones. But the river still finds its path, shaped by countless small forces over long stretches of time. Now even that river grows quiet. The Forum becomes ruins under moonlight. The statues lose their faces. The names that once shook the world become lines in books, whispers in classrooms, soft stories told at night. The fear of kings, the hope for order, the shock of betrayal, the dream of saving a republic. All of it drifts together like distant lights seen across calm water. And as we rest with this story, there is no need to judge who was right or wrong. The past is not asking for verdicts tonight. It is simply offering a reminder. Great changes rarely come from one cause, one person, one moment. They build slowly, quietly, until one event, like the Ides of March, makes the shift visible. A single day can feel like an ending. But it is usually a turning, so we let ancient Rome fade fully now. The sandals, the marble halls, the murmuring Senate, the echo of footsteps in the theater of Pompey, all of it dissolves into soft darkness. The stars above that long-vanished city shine on just as they do now, distant and calm, untouched by human worry. And the story, once full of tension and ambition, settles into stillness. Nothing more to decide, nothing more to fear. Only the slow, steady flow of time carrying everything gently forward. And with that quiet understanding, the past closes its eyes. And so can we. And in that softness, where the past no longer feels sharp, we can almost imagine history itself breathing slowly, like someone who has finally set down a heavy load. Long after the shouts faded from the forum, long after the Senate chamber was washed, and the stains of that day disappeared from sight, Rome kept living in the small ways that matter most. Morning markets. Children chasing each other between columns. Old men arguing about politics on worn stone steps, as if nothing had changed, though everything had. This is another quiet truth about Caesar's assassination. The world did not end. It tilted, and people adjusted. Some who had cheered Caesar learned to speak carefully under new leadership. Some who had feared him later spoke of his time as a period of strength. Memory is soft clay. Each generation reshapes it a little, smoothing some edges, sharpening others. Stories about the Ides of March began to travel. Travelers carried them along roads Caesar himself had built. Merchants told them in distant towns. Soldiers repeated them beside campfires under unfamiliar stars. With each telling, the moment grew larger, almost myth-like, warnings about ambition, about betrayal, about fate. But on that actual day, inside that actual room, it had been close, human, uncertain. The conspirators' hands shook, their plan almost faltered. It was not destiny descending from the sky. It was people, making a choice they could never take back. That is something the night understands well. When we lie awake thinking of our own choices, they can feel enormous. But in the great sweep of time, they become threads woven into a pattern far bigger than we can see while we are inside it. Caesar's life was one such thread, bright, strong, pulling many others along with it. When it snapped, the fabric did not unravel, it shifted shape. Under Augustus, the name Octavian would later take, Rome entered a long stretch historians call the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Roads stretched farther. Trade flowed. Cities grew. Art, poetry, and architecture flourished. The empire expanded and stabilized. And in a strange way, Caesar was still present in all of it. His name became a title. Caesar would echo through centuries, transforming into words like Kaiser and Tsar, carried into lands he never saw. The man fell, but the idea of him, strong, singular rule, traveled onward. The conspirators had tried to stop a future centered on one powerful figure. Instead, they helped create a world where that model would spread. If we let that thought rest gently, without judgment, it feels less like failure and more like inevitability. Some changes are like dawn. You can close your curtains, but the light still grows. Back in that ancient city, night after night, people slept under tiled roofs and open skies, unaware they lived in a turning point. That is always how it is. We never quite know when we are standing in the middle of a chapter future generations will underline. Somewhere, a woman hummed a lullaby while the republic faded and the empire rose. Somewhere, a baker worried more about grain prices than constitutions. Somewhere, a young boy played soldier in the street, pretending to be Caesar or Brutus or some hero whose name he half understood. Life, in its quiet persistence, carries history forward more than grand speeches ever do. And now even those echoes grow faint. The Senate chamber becomes a memory. The daggers become dust. The arguments dissolve into the long, steady hush of time. What remains is not the clash, but the lesson carried softly beneath it. Power changes, systems evolve, and human beings, with all their hopes and fears, shape the path without ever fully controlling it. That can sound heavy in daylight. But at night, it feels almost comforting, because it means no single moment holds everything. No one day decides all of tomorrow. Even the fall of Julius Caesar, shocking, famous, studied for centuries, was just one turn in an endless flowing story. The stars that looked down on Rome that evening still shine, distant and calm, over a different world. They have seen empires rise and fade, cities bloom and crumble, names celebrated and forgotten, and still they glow, steady and quiet. So we let the last images drift away now. Marble warmed by sun, robes brushing stone floors, murmured debates, the slow ripple of the Tiber under bridges long gone. All of it grows softer, farther, lighter, until history is no longer a loud procession, but a distant hum, like wind moving through leaves, like waves folding onto a dark shore, nothing to hold on to, nothing to solve. Just the gentle understanding that everything moves, everything changes, and the night is wide enough to hold it all. And in that wide, calm night, even the story of Caesar's fall finally comes to rest. And when a story finally comes to rest, it does not end with a noise. It ends the way embers fade in a hearth, not with a spark but with a slow dimming, a gentle warmth that lingers even after the flames are gone. So we sit a little longer beside the fading glow of ancient Rome, not to stir it back in the fire but to feel the last of its warmth. Think of how many evenings that city saw. Thousands upon thousands. Suns setting behind its hills, light turning gold on rooftops, shadows stretching across temples and markets. On most of those evenings, nothing historic happened at all. Just meals shared, sandals set by doors, quiet conversations drifting into night air. The Ides of March became famous because it was different. But even that day was wrapped in ordinary hours. Morning light on stone. Midday dust in the streets. A sky that did not darken in warning. History often feels like a thunderclap when we read it later. But when you stand inside it, it is just weather, one moment flowing into the next. Caesar had woken that morning like any other. Adjusted his robe. Listened to voices around him. Perhaps felt a small ache in his joints, the kind that comes with age and long campaigns. Perhaps thought about plans for the future, laws, buildings, journeys. He did not wake feeling like a symbol. No one ever does. The men who gathered around him in the Senate did not feel like villains in a story. They felt like guardians of something fragile. They carried fear disguised as duty, worry disguised as courage. And the crowd outside, the vast heart of Rome, did not feel like an audience in a grand drama. They felt hunger, hope, loyalty, uncertainty, the same simple human things that fill any city, in any age. That is why this story, when told softly, becomes less about daggers and more about people standing at the edge of change without realizing how steep the edge is. Empires do not turn in a single instant. They lean slowly over years. Traditions loosen, expectations shift. One generation accepts what the last would have resisted. Caesar lived at such a leaning point. He was both shaped by it and shaping it in return. When he fell, the lean did not reverse. It continued. And if we follow that motion gently, without sharp lines or loud judgments, we see a pattern that repeats across time. Systems built by people eventually strain under new realities. Leaders rise who seem to solve problems, and create new ones at the same time. Some welcome the change, others fear what is being lost. The arguments sound different in each era. The feelings are the same. That is why the story of Caesar's assassination still lingers. Not because of the blood on the Senate floor, but because it captures a moment when a society asked itself, who should hold power? How much is too much? What are we willing to risk to protect our ideals? Those questions never really go to sleep. But tonight, we do not follow them into debate. We let them float past like distant lanterns on dark water. Rome has grown very far away now. The roads have crumbled into earth. The great names have become echoes. Even the language has changed, shifted, branched into new tongues. Yet the human heartbeat inside the story remains familiar. Ambition, fear, loyalty, hope, the longing for order. The fear of control. The wish to do what is right, even when right is unclear. Seen this way, the Ides of March is not a sharp ending. It is a soft reminder that people do not act with the full map of the future in their hands. They choose with what they know, what they feel, what they believe, and the results ripple outward in ways no one can fully predict, that can feel unsettling in the daylight. At night it can feel freeing. Because it means the world has always been uncertain, always been changing, and yet life has continued, meals cooked, children raised, laughter shared under evening skies. Even after Caesar's fall, Even after republics fade, even after empires rise, the stars do not hurry, the earth does not stop. Time moves with the same steady breath it always has. And now, at the very edge of this long, wandering tale, there is almost nothing left but quiet. The Senate chamber is empty, the forum is still. The river slides past in darkness, whispering over stones that remember more than any book. The figures of the past dissolve into silhouettes, then into shadows, then into nothing at all. Only the night remains, wide, calm, endless, holding every story that ever was and everyone yet to come in the same gentle, untroubled dark. And in that dark, at last there is nothing to follow, nothing to continue. Alright, but now we are at the part where the story is less about Rome and more about drifting. Because once history has gone quiet, the mind has room to wander in softer ways. Imagine the city now not as stone and noise, but as memory. Like a painting left out in moonlight, its colors fading into silvery blues and grays. The sharp edges of buildings blur. Columns melt into shadow. The forum becomes an open, empty space where only wind walks. No voices argue about laws anymore. No generals plan campaigns. No senators whisper of power. The questions that once felt urgent have dissolved into the same stillness that holds old footsteps and forgotten names. And that is how time treats everything, eventually, not with anger, not with judgment, but with quiet distance. Caesar, who once stood at the center of the known world, now exists only as a story carried gently from one mind to another, his triumphs, his risks, his final walk into the Senate. All of it lighter now, like pages turning slowly in a book no one is in a hurry to finish. If you listen closely, not with your ears but with that calm place just before sleep, you can almost feel the rhythm beneath it all. Rise and fall, order and change, fear and hope. Again and again, like waves reaching a shore and slipping back into the sea, nothing stays. Not power, not fear. Not even the memory of great events in their sharpest form. Everything softens. The men who believed they were saving Rome are gone. The man they struck down is gone. The system they fought over is gone. But the human world they were part of continues, reshaped, rebalanced, moving forward the only way it knows how, one day at a time, one sunrise after another. And that is where this long path through the past finally leads us. To the understanding that history is not a wall of noise behind us, it is more like a distant ocean. When we stand close, we hear the crashing waves. When we step back, it becomes a low, endless hush. Tonight we are far from the shore. The waves are small. The sound is soft. Ancient Rome sleeps under layers of centuries. Grass grows where crowds once stood. Stars shine over ruins that no longer remember the arguments that shaped them. And the story that began with ambition, fear, and the fate of a powerful man ends not with a blade, not with a speech, but with stillness. Just stillness. The kind that comes when a long tale has nothing left to prove. The kind that lets your thoughts slow, your breathing ease, your mind drift like a small boat on calm water, no current pulling, no storm ahead. History has folded itself away for the night, and there is nothing left to do now but rest. Alright, we go even softer now? Not forward in events, those are long finished, but outward, into the quiet space that stories leave behind when they are done with history and only rhythm remains. Picture the world as it is when human voices fade. No Senate, no speeches, no clashing ideas about republics or rulers. Just earth, sky, water, and time, the things that were there before Rome and stayed after it. The Tiber still moves. It moved when Caesar was a child, when he crossed the Rubicon, when he fell in the Senate. It moved when Augustus ruled, when emperors came and went, when stones from great temples were carried away and reused in humbler buildings. Rivers do not argue about politics. They do not cling to systems. They simply continue, finding the easiest path forward, bending around obstacles, smoothing sharp edges over years so long no one can see the change happening. History is like that too. The Ides of March felt sharp, sudden, violent, unforgettable. But time flowed over it, around it, through it, until the edges softened. What was once breaking news became a lesson. What was once a lesson became a story. What was once a story became a quiet echo in the background of human memory. And echoes are gentle things. They do not demand attention. They wait. They drift. If you listen in the stillness, you can almost sense how many lives overlap that moment in Rome. People who never met Caesar still lived under the world his choices shaped. Children born years later grew up in an empire made possible by events they never witnessed. Farmers tilled soil, merchants counted coins, poets wrote lines of verse, all inside a future that unfolded from that single turning point. But none of them felt like they were living in history. They were just living. That is the softest truth of all. Even the greatest events are woven into ordinary days. Someone heard of Caesar's death and still had to fetch water. Someone argued about the Republic and still had to mend the sandal. Someone cheered, someone mourned, someone shrugged, and evening still came. The sun always sets. The sky always darkens the same way, slowly, color fading from gold to blue to deep velvet black. No empire has ever stopped that. And now, in this calm place we've wandered to, Rome is not a city of stone and marble. It is a quiet landscape under starlight. The great buildings are outlines. The roads are pale threads. The noise of crowds has dissolved into a vast, peaceful hush. The fears that drove men to raise daggers have faded too. Fear never lasts forever. It burns hot, then cools, then becomes memory. Even the fear of losing a republic, the fear of tyranny, the fear of change, all of it has settled into the same silence that holds everything else. Nothing is urgent anymore. Not here. Not now. The past is done trying to teach loudly. It simply exists, like distant hills in moonlight, present, but not pressing. If you imagine standing on one of those Roman hills at night, long after the city sleeps, you would feel the wide sky above, heavy with stars. The same stars Caesar saw. The same stars the conspirators saw. The same stars seen by countless others who believed their moment was the center of everything. From up there, the city would look small. The Senate House, the Forum, the palaces, all just shapes, quiet and still. The dramas inside them invisible from a distance. That distance is where we are now. Far enough away that nothing hurts. Far enough away that everything blends into a single, gentle picture of humanity moving through time, rise and fall. Hope and fear, building and breaking, again and again. Like breathing. And just like breathing, it happens without the world needing to think about it. No one controls the whole pattern. No one sees the entire design while they are inside it. But from far away, from the calm edge of night, it looks almost peaceful. A long flowing motion that never truly stops, only changes shape, so we let the last details go. No more names, no more dates, no more sharp turns of fate. Just the sense of something vast and steady, carrying everything forward. The story that began with one powerful man, one anxious senate, one decisive day, has widened until it is no longer about them at all. It is about time and how it holds every triumph and mistake with the same quiet patience. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. The world turns. The sky stretches overhead. The past rests where it belongs, behind us, softened, no longer loud. And in this wide, gentle stillness, there is nothing left to follow. Only the slow rhythm of existence itself, steady as a river, calm as the night sky, carrying all stories, even Caesar's, into the same deep, peaceful quiet. We can keep drifting, then, not into new events, because history has long since set them down, but into the wide, quiet space that stretches beyond them, where stories loosen their shapes and become something softer. Imagine the earth itself as an old, patient listener. It felt the footsteps of Roman sandals, the rumble of chariots, the marching of legions. It felt Caesar's presence as surely as it felt the presence of farmers, bakers, children running through alleys. To the ground beneath them, no step was more important than another. Weight is weight. Life is life. When Caesar fell, the earth did not tremble. When empires rose, the hills did not lean closer to watch. They simply remained, holding everything without preference. There is something deeply calming in that. The idea that beyond all human urgency there is a steadiness that does not react, does not panic, does not celebrate or mourn, it just allows. Rome lived, Rome changed, Rome faded, the land stayed. And above it, the sky performed its endless gentle cycle. Dawn soft as breath, noon bright and clear, evening painted in slow colors, night spreading like ink in water. On the night after the Ides of March, the stars looked exactly as they had the night before. Constellations held their places. The moon followed its path. No sign appeared in the heavens to mark the death of a dictator. The universe is very large. Human events are very small. But small does not mean meaningless. A single candle in a dark room is small too, yet it changes everything inside that room. Caesar was like that candle for Rome, bright, commanding attention, shaping the space around him. When he went out, the room did not disappear. It grew dimmer for a moment. Then other lights were lit. Augustus, the emperors who followed. Generations of people who never knew the Republic at all, who grew up thinking this new arrangement was simply how the world worked. That is how change settles in, not with a shout, but with familiarity. What once felt shocking becomes normal. What once seemed impossible becomes routine. And eventually, even that routine fades into history. The Roman Empire that followed Caesar would one day fracture, shrink, transform again. Cities would fall silent. Roads would crack. Languages would evolve. New kingdoms would rise where old provinces had been. If we stretched this story forward, it would never end. One turning leads to another, like links in a chain with no final ring. But tonight we are not stretching forward. We are floating. Far above the chain, where individual links blur into a single gentle curve. From here, Caesar's life is a bright glint along that curve, visible, important, but not alone. He is one of countless figures who believed their moment demanded action, who stepped forward into uncertainty, who changed the direction of things without ever seeing where the path would finally lead. That is not tragic. It is simply human. And the human story, when heard from far enough away, sounds less like conflict and more like a murmur. A low, continuous sound of striving, adjusting, living. Like wind through tall grass, like waves folding on the shore. Like breath in a sleeping room, nothing is frozen. Nothing is final. Everything moves, slowly, steadily, into what comes next. The fear that drove the conspirators has long since dissolved. The ambition that drove Caesar has too. The hopes of the crowds, the anger, the loyalty, all of it has returned to the same quiet place where all feelings eventually rest. What remains is the pattern they formed together. And even that, over enough time, softens. Mountains wear down, rivers change course. Stars shift in the sky. The past does not vanish, but it becomes gentle. Its sharp corners round off. Its loudest moments fade into background hum. That is where we are now, in the hum. No daggers. No speeches, no great decisions hanging in the balance. Only the sense of a long journey that has slowed to a stop, like a traveler setting down their pack after a road that stretched farther than they ever imagined. The dust settles, the air is still. And in that stillness, there is no need to continue the story, because the story has already flowed into the endless current of time where all stories go. Nothing more to add, nothing more to resolve. Just the wide, calm presence of existence itself, holding Caesar, Rome, and every other tale in the same boundless, peaceful quiet. We at the very edge now, the place where a story stops being a story and becomes a feeling. But we can let that feeling stretch a little longer. Not with events, not with names, not with history marching forward, but with the simple awareness of how everything once intense eventually becomes calm. Think of a footprint in sand. At first it is sharp. You see the heel, the arch, the toes. You know someone just passed by, but wind moves. Grains shift, edges blur. Soon it is only a dip, then nothing at all. The Ides of March was like that footprint. Deep at first. Clear, unmistakable, but time is the wind. It did not erase the moment completely. We still remember, but it smoothed it, folded it into the larger landscape of human memory, where it rests beside countless other turning points. And the landscape itself is quiet. No banners. No cries of freedom or tyrant. No clatter of sandals on marble. Just open space under a dark sky. If you stand in that space, there is no pressure to understand everything. No need to decide who is right, no urgency at all. The past is done explaining itself. It simply lies there, like old hills shaped by weather, long forgotten. This is where all long stories end when they are ready to let you sleep. Not with conclusions, but with distance. Caesar's voice is gone. Brutus's doubts are gone. The Senate's fears are gone. Even Rome, in its grand form, is gone. But something gentle remains. The sense that life flows on no matter how great the moment seems. That no single day, no single person holds the whole weight of the world. That everything, even the most powerful empire, eventually rests. The night has no opinion about republics or rulers. It does not take sides. It simply spreads, cool and soft, over everything equally. And in that night, all stories are the same size. Small, contained, safe. So we let the last ripple fade. The river smooth again. The sand level, the air still. Nothing more approaches. Nothing waits ahead. Only the quiet that has been there all along, beneath every event, beneath every ambition. Patient, steady, unchanged. And now finally, even the echo of Rome is gone. Only rest remains. We're beyond the road now. No more history to walk through, no more scenes to pass. Just a wide open stillness where everything that once felt solid has become light, almost weightless. Imagine sound fading the way light fades at dusk. First the bright details go. The voices, the movement, the sharp outlines. Then the softer shapes blur. Finally, there is only a gentle dimness where things exist without edges. That is where the story is now. Caesar is no longer a figure moving through time. Rome is no longer a place with streets and stone. They are like distant constellations, patterns we can recognize, but far away, quiet, no longer changing. The urgency that filled their world has no place here. No one is trying to fix the Republic. No one is guarding power. No one is afraid of tomorrow. Tomorrow in this space is just another soft stretch of sky. It's strange, in a peaceful way, how everything that once seemed so important becomes calm when seen from far enough away. The arguments shrink, the emotions cool. Even the most dramatic moments settle into the same gentle rhythm as everything else. Like waves that once crashed loudly, now rolling in from far out at sea, so distant you can barely hear them. The story has done what stories do. It carried us somewhere, showed us human hearts under pressure, and then slowly loosened its hold. Now it asks nothing more, no lesson to memorize, no judgment to make, only stillness. If there is any feeling left, it is the same one you get looking at an old landscape at twilight, a sense that countless things happened here once, yet all is quiet now, nothing disturbed, nothing demanding. Time has covered everything with the same soft layer, and beneath that layer there is a kind of comfort. Because it means nothing stays sharp forever, not fear, not conflict, not even the weight of great decisions. Everything eases, everything becomes part of the wide, slow breathing of the world. So we do not follow Rome any farther. We do not call back Caesar or the Senate or the crowds. We let them remain where they are, far behind, resting in the long memory of the earth. Here, there is only calm space. A dark sky without edges, a quiet ground without footprints. A sense of floating, unhurried, nowhere to go. And when there is nowhere to go, the mind can finally stop walking. The story has thinned into silence. And silence, at last, is enough. There's almost nothing left to continue with now, and that's exactly the point. Not because the story ran out, but because it dissolved. Like mist at dawn, it didn't end in a line or a door closing. It thinned, spread out, became part of the air. You can't point to where it stops. You just notice that everything is quiet, so we stay in that quiet a little longer. No Rome, no past. No future. Just a slow, steady sense of being. Imagine lying in a wide field at night. No buildings. No voices. Only the faint outline of the land beneath you and the sky stretching endlessly above. You're not looking for anything. Not thinking about anything in particular. Just aware of space. That's where we are now. The story of Caesar was like walking a long road. At first there were landmarks, people, turning points. Then fewer. Then open countryside. Now the road itself has faded into open ground, and walking no longer feels necessary. Nothing is pushing from behind, nothing is pulling from ahead. Time isn't a line here, it's a calm lake. Events that once felt like splashes have settled. The surface is smooth again, reflecting only the wide sky. Even memory grows quiet in this place. Not erased, just resting, like a book closed on a table in a dark room. The words are still there, but no one is reading, and that's gentle. Because it means nothing needs to be solved tonight. No history to untangle, no outcomes to worry over. Everything that happened has already found its place in the long flowing pattern of things. You don't have to carry any of it, the night carries it. Time carries it. The world carries it. You can just be still, breathing in, breathing out, like the earth does. Like the sea does. Like the slow turning of the planet under the stars. Steady, unhurried, endless. The last trace of the story is no longer a picture or a thought, it's just a feeling of quiet space. And in that space, nothing continues. Because nothing needs to. We just sink a little deeper into the quiet that's already here. Imagine the difference between floating and standing. When you stand, your muscles hold you up, even if you don't notice. There's effort, tiny but constant. But when you float in calm water, The effort leaves. The water holds you. You don't have to do anything to stay where you are. That's where the story has brought us. You're not following events anymore. Not tracking people, places, causes, consequences. All of that was the shoreline. We drifted past it. Now there's only open water, smooth, dark, and gentle. Nothing is happening, and that's peaceful. The mind, so used to motion, to solving, to imagining what comes next, slowly realizes there is no next to prepare for here. No twist waiting. No unfinished thread. Just space. If a thought rises, about Rome, about Caesar, about anything at all, it's like a small ripple on that water. It appears, it widens. Then it fades on its own, leaving the surface smooth again. No need to push it away. No need to follow it. The night does this naturally. It takes the sharp edges of the day and wraps them in softness. Sounds are quieter. Light is lower. Even time feels slower, stretched out like a long, easy breath. Somewhere far away, beyond memory, beyond story, the earth keeps turning, not fast enough to feel. Not loud enough to hear. Just a steady, silent motion through space. No one has to manage it. No one has to think about it. It simply happens. The same way your breathing happens now, without effort. In and out. A small tide, gentle and regular. The body knows what to do when the mind stops trying to lead. The past is like that too. Once we stop holding on to it, it settles into its place by itself. Rome is settled. Caesar is settled. All of it rests where it belongs, not gone, just quiet, like distant hills under moonlight. And you don't have to walk there again tonight. You can stay here in the wide, dark calm where nothing is required of you, no decisions, no understanding, no remembering. Just the feeling of being held by the moment the way water holds a floating leaf, still, light, unhurried. Even, the idea of continuing starts to fade, because continuing implies movement, and movement isn't needed anymore. You've arrived at the softest part, the place stories are meant to lead to but never talk about directly. The place where words thin out, where thoughts slow down. Where awareness feels wide and quiet, like standing at the edge of a vast field under a night sky with no fences, no roads, no direction to choose. Nothing is missing. Nothing is about to happen. Everything is simply at rest. And in that rest, you can let go a little more of the story, of the day, of the need to follow anything at all. Just floating now, in the calm, in the dark, in the gentle, endless quiet where even time seems to have fallen asleep. And now, at last, we arrive at the final edge of this long, wandering journey. The story of Caesar, the conspirators, Rome, the Ides of March, all of it has softened into silence. Every shout, every step, every choice has drifted far away, carried off by time, leaving only the faint echo of life's rhythm behind. What once felt urgent, heavy, unshakable, now feels light, like dust settling on still water. The streets are empty. The Senate is quiet. The stars above ancient Rome shine indifferent and steady, distant witnesses to everything that ever happened and everything that will. Even the memory of the city, the empire, and the man at its center has found rest. And here, in this quiet, there is nothing left to chase. No lessons to force. No arguments to follow. Only the vast, calm expanse of time itself, slow, gentle, infinite. It holds all stories, all lives, all events with the same soft, unhurried patience. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the weight of history fall away. Let the world soften around you. Let the currents of time carry every name, every deed, every ambition to its quiet place. And now, in this stillness, the story ends not with a clash or a cry, but with peace. A peace that spreads wide and deep, reaching even you, resting with you, holding you gently in its calm. Sleep now. The past has done its work. The present holds you. The future will unfold, as it always does, in its own time. And with that, the night is complete, the tale is complete, and all is finally at rest.